So tonight we're looking at The Ease of Being by Jean Klein. And I'm on page 47. I'm going to be skipping around, and there are not too many pages. But I think, I like what he's saying here, and we'll see what you all get out of it as well. So the questioner says to him, spiritual teachers often say the world of phenomena appears and disappears, and there is nothing the person need do. But most of us feel the need to control our lives. So Jean says, why control life? It has no need of control. Life takes itself in charge. Trying to control life means living in memory, in repetition, in the continual process of having and becoming. But once you drop this urge to control, you are without conflict, and you are one with the current of life. Be a spectator to the spectacle. The play goes on, but you are in the audience watching. If you go up on the stage and become involved in the play, you're lost. So, the questioner then, I've never pursued meditation for fear of discovering all I've suppressed. Is this reaction a sign I should look more deeply into it? Or does it mean I'm not yet mature enough? Jean, what surfaces during meditation are residues of the past. These residues are energy localized through association of ideas, energy mobilized into fear and insecurity. Remain a witness to all this. In beginning the choiceless observer, attention is motiveless, and all conditioning subsides. Let me read that sentence again. Remain a witness to all this. In being the choiceless observer, be the choiceless observer. Then attention is motiveless, and all conditioning subsides. You may find that the conscious, the unconscious, and superconscious come up, but these are not new. They are the past. Let them emerge, but remain the observer. Initially, the observer is also an object of perception, but later, even this observer dissolves into silence. Then you are this silence, timeless in both the presence and absence of time. Questioner, well, why am I sometimes afraid of silence? Who is this I who is afraid? It is the ego, the image we have of ourselves. It dissolves the moment you let it go, the moment you observe it. Pure observation has no place for the I image, so let it go. Be completely free of all situations. Questioner. It is difficult for me to observe fear when I'm totally caught up in it. Jean. Look at the mechanism of fear. See what is before this fear. What associations have brought you to this state? You feel a sensation and label it fear. You project an image of an I who feels afraid. Then place this image in a dark forest before a huge lion. The projection of yourself as a man, as a personality, arouses fear because the personality needs a situation to exist. Many of us prefer to suffer, prefer prolonging a hopeless condition because this gives the I a place to cling. If the I has nothing to grasp, it dies. But we must become accustomed to dying. See each situation afresh without referring to a past image of yourself. When you stop projecting a person, an image of yourself as a man, as intelligent, as a certain kind of personality, as having so many lovers and so on, what happens? You are still and alert, but not alert to something. Then the situation doesn't belong to an image, but to global consciousness. When you are afraid, the I is involved in this fear and cannot intentionally let it go. The I image drops away the moment fear becomes perception. And as fear needs stimulation from an image to exist, when there is no image, there is no fear. The idea of being an individual and separate entity is incorrect. An independent entity doesn't exist. You are one with the stars, with the moon, with animals, plants, and stones and society. You have no existence independent of the whole. Well, if the individual doesn't exist, what does? Thoughts, emotions, and perceptions exist. But there is nothing personal in these. The I is a convention in human relationship. It exists as a concept, but has no reality. Accept life. Let it happen. You are not your life. Only an observer sitting in the audience regarding your actor on stage. The actor may play a hero, a husband, or someone in pain, but he knows he's acting. He is not identified with the role. It is the same thing in your life. Well, then there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do. When you look deeply, you will see that most doing is reaction. Pure motiveless observation alone is empty of reaction. for there is nobody to react. Then every action is spontaneous from moment to moment. You must not come to any conclusions in this kind of meeting. The speaking is more or less a pretext. The real perfume is in the silence. I don't understand why I feel so uncomfortable in silence. If you try to be silent, you can't be. Silence is your original nature. There's no need to try to be what you naturally are. Just notice when you aren't silent. We can only really speak of communication when we remain silent. Life's beauty lies in communication, but not the kind of occurring between two objects, two personalities, two images. There's no meaning, no play left in a relationship between two images, between the idea of being a man and the idea of being a woman. In silence, there's no man or woman. There's only love. Then communication is communion. Let me just take you now to okay, well, maybe we should go. It's the question that says, it's so easy to play the role. John says, don't play the role at all. Taking yourself as a man means you must fulfill so many qualifications. How to present yourself, how to give yourself, how to think, how to speak, how to act. You've even been educated to think in terms of being a man, confined by all those labels. The same holds true when you take yourself for a father or a mother. There is no man or woman, no father, no mother. Stop projecting into your surroundings and let each moment capture you in a fresh way without memory. Now, obviously, here he means psychological memory, right? Look at things as if for the first time. Be completely undressed, shapeless, nameless. You are just a beautiful being, nothing more. And this requires no education. Simply be the beautiful being you naturally are. Well, but if I were to behave that way, I'd feel as if I had no protection, as if I were defenseless. Whom would you like to protect? There is nobody to defend. You have said, oh, wait, maybe I should tell you this. Okay. You have said we can't accomplish anything through will or effort. Yet if we let go of effort, we may find that nothing happens, that we don't do anything. Jean, but nothing ever happens when you try to make it happen. The very intention to make an event occur blocks its spontaneous expression. Intention has its roots in fear and insecurity. So all this conditioned energy must come to a stop. The mind must go into abeyance. only an attitude of non-interference can bring the mechanical memory process and all its accompanying conditioning to an end. Then original unconditioned energy surfaces. Generally, we know only concepts, but we don't know silence. The value of meditation practice is to help us become familiar with letting go, with being still. When the mind no longer interferes, there is only silence, and out of this springs creativity. But as long as we stay under the spell of the will, there is only repetition. When we look at our friends and our surroundings, we see only our projections, our superimpositions, but we don't see the world as it is. So the first step is to notice that we don't really see, that we project our fears and hopes onto things. To see this, you must be still. When one lives this silence, nothing is repetitive, and you will be surprised by what emerges. Well, what motivates us to even begin to look at precepts and concepts as objects? We are in constant search for freedom, for some way to transcend insecurity. This feeling of insecurity or fear in itself is itself the motive to go beyond it. A process demanding investigation and inquiry. Take note that in obtaining a desired object, there may be momentary freedom from fear, but the desired object is not really the cause of this. The security experienced at such times has no place for an image of an object or of someone who obtains it. There is only happiness. After you leave this happiness, the ego wants to attribute it to some cause. So it says, I was happy because I met such and such a person. I was happy because I heard some beautiful music, and so on. When you follow this investigation to the end, you discover you are this happiness. You see that in reality, we can't speak in terms of cause and effect, for happiness is causeless. From this moment, you spontaneously drop volition and effort. You remain constantly open. There is no longer a sense of separation, and consequently, no insecurity or fear. Well, what do you suggest I do with my observation that the basic context of my life is anger? I'm aware that I'm angry, but that doesn't stop it. Sometimes I substitute some other state and it goes away momentarily, but later on it returns. When you say I'm angry, this anger is a concept, and you can't do anything with an idea of anger. So don't get involved in the concept. Anger is a perception, a sensation in the body and mind. Remain with the perception, by which I mean totally accept the sensation of being angry. In the moment of acceptance, there's no place for someone who accepts. So complicity with anger automatically stops. Anger is really only energy localized as a state, an idea. At first, it is localized occasionally, then more frequently, until it is constantly present and you've identified with it. It would be the same with fear, exactly the same. When you wake up in the morning and find yourself in a certain frame of mind, a state of tension, for example, make it an object of observation. Feel it, accept it. It requires very little to accept something, but our acceptance is usually only psychological. I'm speaking here of accepting the actual function, the sensation of the tension. More often than not, we try to escape our sensations. We say, I feel afraid, and escape into this idea, or we phone a friend, or we read a book. But when you accept a perception, it is no longer fixed, and it blossoms and dissolves back into your awareness, your acceptance. When you accept something totally without judging or qualifying, acceptance is awareness. And in this, you are completely free. Completely. It's beautiful. This feeling of freedom that comes in accepting life, accepting what you are. Well, let me just see. So, don't control life, accept. But that doesn't mean if you've gotten a terrible diagnosis that you don't take care of it. But he's saying here, you don't resist it by running away from it. You let yourself stay with the perception of the pain and the fear, to stay with it. And staying with it, which is hard to do because we want to run away from pain. But by staying with it, he said, it blossoms, it gets larger, but then it fades. But all this that he's talking about has to still do with this me, this identification with a center of who we think we really are. And he's trying here to show us. Be a spectator to the spectacle. Don't identify with it. Watch it be a witness to it, the way you would see something up on a movie screen. The play goes on, but you're in the audience watching. If you go up on the stage and become involved in the play, you're lost. And that's what we do. A thought comes, a fear comes, and we get involved. We get caught up in it. We go on the train with it. And we give it life. Rather than, as he's suggesting, step back, observe. And he uses the same words that Krishnamurti uses, choiceless awareness. Because obviously there cannot be any judgment. He said no judgment, no conclusions. Because then that's what the me, the ego, does. Attention, remain a witness to all this. In being the choiceless observer, attention is motiveless. So that's really important. Because when we give attention, but it's got a motive in it, because I want to get something from what I'm paying attention to or giving attention to, then we're back in what we're caught in. But when attention has no motive, just to attend, then he's saying the me is absent. And there's just pure awareness. That's attending. It's no longer the personality, no longer the me. Pure awareness attends. And then in that attention, there's clarity. And in that attention where there's clarity, there's right action. Because it's clear what needs to be done or not needs to be done. But usually, as he said, we react. We don't act, we react. We go on automatic. He then said something that was very important too. I have to see if I can find it. He says, this, many of us prefer to suffer, prefer prolonging a hopeless condition, because this gives the I, the me, a place to cling. If the I, the me, has nothing to grasp, it dies. But we must become accustomed to dying. Psychologically, become accustomed to dying psychologically. And that's when he keeps saying, free yourself of memory, psychological memory. Not the memory that you need to drive a car or to use your computer or to practice whatever skills you have. He doesn't mean that. But the psychological memory, our conditioned being that we are now. So I love it. But we must become accustomed to dying. Psychologically dying, letting go, giving up,
Not projecting.
not projecting. Probably die moment by moment, not holding on.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I had one thought on earlier in the reading about the questioner says he feels very uncomfortable in silence.
Yeah.
And it's on page 49. And Jean Klein says, pay more attention when you aren't silent. And I thought, this is really wonderful, because if we're out making noise, chances are we're not really sort of dwelling in our true nature. So I found that sort of an interesting bit of advice, is to observe when you aren't silent.
That's right. That's right. And you are in silence when the thoughts are constantly moving.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because when a problem arises, a real problem, and there's not enough clarity to see a solution here. There's the mind itself won't let it go, because the mind has such a strong need to find the solution. So it's so hard to let go enough to step back and get some clarity by witnessing what's going on, by seeing the facts of the situation, and seeing our responses to those facts of the situation, the whole picture. That's a difficult moment. However, when there's an awareness that the mind isn't letting go, it's not letting itself just die to the situation. Have some silence and then see what comes up. We get stuck, as he said, and then the energy has localized itself into the fear, into the worry, and we're keeping it constricted by not allowing it to go and to have some silence and see then what comes up.
Another thought is yesterday, my friend here, I was wanting to sit next to her, but her dog was there. So I shushed the dog off the couch, and she got really angry at me and said some things that I didn't quite agree with. And so I sulked about it all day, all night. I barely slept a wink. And then because I wanted retribution. I wanted to be able to explain why I was right and why she was wrong.
Yes.
On and on and on.
Yes.
And then this morning I woke up and I just kind of, went to see her, sat next to her, and just sort of had a normal conversation. And I could just sort of see in myself that all these sort of feelings of anger were sort of dissolving, because I wasn't taking it all as a personal, one has to be right, one has to be wrong sort of a situation. So, but then other things creep back in. Well, maybe I'm just gonna give her the silent treatment, just so she knows that
Yeah.
I'm still angry.
Yes.
And then I can observe that for a period of time and see that this doesn't make a bit of sense either. So
Right.
I'm in the middle of all this sort of playing out, but the non-duality is actually quite helpful if I can just observe it, not
That's
react, and there's no I that's doing the reacting.
that's the point. That's because it's only the I that says, I want to show her I'm right.
Exactly.
And I was right. I was right. She was wrong. And I want her to see that.
Yep.
That's the me. The me thinking.
Well, mostly when you have an emotional reaction, I mean, I'm learning. I'm getting to the point where I realize that's the me in operation. If I can pause the me, there are no emotions. So that's my way of, in a roundabout way, coming through another door, trying to practice that choiceless awareness that KJ and Klein is talking about.
Right.
Because that choiceless awareness doesn't involve the I. You can't have an I present and choicelessly be aware.
Correct.
Can't do it.
Right.
So with me, it's mostly, it's not that I'm pursuing something. It's when I become aware of a reaction that I'm having, that reaction is the clue that the I is functioning, and I've come to accept that it's not productive
Right.
because it's a function of the I, and in a sense, practice not directing attention or giving energy to the thought. You can't control the thoughts. This idea of getting rid of your memory, I don't buy that. You're not going to get rid of your memory. But what you can do, what I can do anyhow, to me, I can most of the times just not give attention, not direct attention to the thought, and eventually it goes. It doesn't stay around for too long.
Right. Right.
I think also this thing of using the mind to transcend the mind,
Mm.
which is
Is
kind of like
kind of like so.
so we have this
So we have this malleable.
You guys hear an echo?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know what.
Now it's good, Chip. Now it's good.
Okay, can you hear me still?
Good.
Perfect. Now it's
Great. But someone else, Bill, for example, might sit on the couch after shushing the dog and get shushed away, and might not have a reaction to that at all.
Mhm.
And Ugo, you're saying you can't get rid of memory, but I have experience where I don't have any memory of anything at times. But I guess what I'm saying is our minds are malleable. We're using the mind to transcend the mind. We're gonna basically, in the same way as we use a ladder, they have that analogy of using the ladder to get to the window, and then after you get to the window, you don't need the ladder anymore. But this process that we have now is we're taking this premise of it's just life is consciousness. There's just this consciousness. So the question is how do we become aware of it? How do we basically learn to recognize ourselves as it and not get lost on the stage as he's talking about in his writings here or whatever.
Mhm.
But I think it's kind of brilliant to recognize that the effects that we have on our mind are powerful. We can train our minds in lots of different ways. And so I think we don't need to be discouraged at any point if we're getting tripped up by our minds. We can recognize that our minds are continually in a state of malleability, and what we're doing is learning how to have them work for us, the self, versus the self be imprisoned by the mind.
Right.
And that's kind of like what we're doing with we talk about these different things, and we're connecting the dots in this and that way, and we're basically building that ladder, to transcend the mind. And when we think about it, or when we can think about it, and we have these experiences, like I said to you, Hugo, where I have no memory of anything at times, and it's wonderful. It's very peaceful. I Chip, or whatever name is applied to me, I don't exist in that moment. I am. No memory, no reaction to a world. So anyway, I think we're very fortunate to be able to have these conversations, and to be able to reform our minds so that they begin to work for us, the self, versus be bound by the mind.
Chip, wouldn't you say that what we call the mind is nothing more than the consistent flow of thoughts,
Yeah,
right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what we refer to as mind, is the consistent, uninterrupted flow of thoughts.
Yeah, I think, like I said, for me, and Ira knows this, I mean, much better, but the vritti, or whatever, this notion in my mind, in the way I'm looking at this, and I'm speaking conceptually, but that's just because that's what we're doing here. We're using words to share concepts and ideas. But in my mind, creation, the coin of creation, is basically just thought. That's all there is. So there's thought, and then there's stillness, which is outside of the realm of thought. There is no thing in stillness. And then there's the realm of creation, which is the realm of thought.
Well,
that's how I see it.
I got a little different angle on thought. As I understand, my understanding of thought is the experience of our senses, our five senses, being recorded in memory. That's all thought is. Thought is a bringing up of a past event, not a present event, because there is no sense of thought in the present. When you're in, like right now, in a sense, there's no thought involved. I'm doing something. After I get through whatever I'm doing, there may be thought, which is a reflection of my memory of what's going on. So that I sense, so I kind of feel that I have to be somewhat suspicious of what arises from thought, because those are all past events, things that have happened. And as has been said in many different ways by many different teachers here, and yourselves too, the Moschettas, there's a complication in how those thoughts are placed in our memory. In other words, we don't see what's there. We don't see reality. We don't hear reality. Those senses have been conditioned from the day we're born. And at some point, with the recognition that they are conditioned, that thoughts maybe are not seeing reality, then what arises from thought may not necessarily be the everything that, the God of whatever. That my understanding is that to be creative, to be really, is to be still And there is no thought, that it's in a situation where the mind is still. There is no reference to anything. There's total silence. The brain is total silence. That something happens there that I guess you can't put it into words. It has to be experienced. You come to a different dimension, in a sense. And it's in that dimension that creativity can exist. Anything other than that is a rehash of memory. It's just a rehash of what has been, and it's a different form. It's like an endless serial of a movie, you know, just a continuation of it. I mean, that's my more or less understanding of it.
You know, there are some lines he says here. He says, see each situation afresh without referring to a past image of yourself. Stop projecting into your surroundings and let each moment capture you in a fresh way without memory. So it's so delicate. So you're in a situation and suddenly you find yourself reacting. So that means you've already projected the past into the present, because the me is the past. Thought, unless it's functional thinking, psychological me thinking is the past. So you project that into the present situation. And that's why, you know, it's interesting, Bill, when you were saying you sat next to your friend and she shushed you away, and there was a moment of hurt, right? Would you say? A moment of hurt. So then, what is it that got hurt? Is it not the me and the image that I have of me? That's what really got hurt.
Yeah. That's
So, right? So if I'm there, or if one is there without an image, without projecting the me into the situation,
Nobody to be hurt.
how can anybody, there's nobody there to be hurt.
I guess there's a line also to making yourself numb to these feelings that are coming up. You know, because you can go to an intellectual version of what non-duality is and say, I shouldn't be feeling this because there's no me to feel this. But still, I think you need to feel the feelings and experience the whole situation. Just try not to react to it.
Well, that would be like at level one. You can't, at the moment you say, I label this, I'm feeling hurt, and I shouldn't be feeling hurt.
Right.
The moment that happens, now you're already in the soup of the me. Right, and there is no getting out of that except by that silent observation, that choiceless observation, that that's what's happening in this moment. That it's the me that got hurt. The image got hurt. But the witness of that situation, of that image, can never be hurt because it's not a me.
Yeah.
Well, I can identify with that. You know, as Bill, you were talking, I was in a sense in your shoes and saying to myself, when she does, she should not have done that. And there I am. I'm trying to run the show again. I'm trying to be the director. Saying she should not have done that. And rather than, maybe getting up and giving her a little kiss on this, on the cheek, and then let her react. No,
You guys,
it's hard. It's, we've been raised all our lives to think a certain way, and I mean, I'm thankful for where I am, and that I'm able to see all of this and talk with you all, and get a sense of understanding myself. But I have to be very careful not to lay on, with a very heavy stick. I should be doing this and I should be doing that. That's hard for me.
No.
Shoulds
guys-
belong to the me.
yeah.
Yeah,
Do you guys,
yeah,
do you guys know the music Scheherazade, Rimsky-Korsakov?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I
Right.
do.
So,
beautiful.
there's that theme with the violin. You remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about that, right, the violin was created, right? Somebody had these ideas and these thoughts, and they created this violin. Right? So I just think, again, thought is not the bad guy. Thought is the mechanism of creation. And I think if you're not recognizing that, you're kind of missing this aspect that's foundational to your experience of what you're calling reality. Right? So somebody created this. There wasn't a
Yes.
violin, after the earth was cooling into a solid state or something.
Right.
So thought is a creative process. So to demonize thought and say that thought is a bad thing, or thought only comes from the past, it's not true, and it's also not possible, and it's also not your experience. If thought only comes from the past, then the violin never would have been created, or if it only came from the past, it's always been created. It's always been here. So,
It's
I mean, you could
psychological thought.
No, I know, but I want to be clear for this when we're talking about thought, because it's very important to recognize that this is our experience of the world. There are inventions, there are things that are done for the first time. And then that violin was used by this composer, Rimsky-Korsakov, right? He said, oh, I'm going to use that idea of that violin and I'm going to write music for it. So he's sharing his idea, and then he's getting some other guy or girl to play the violin. So there's this communication that's happening through the form of music. Thought is powerful, and it's I think it's important that we recognize that it's foundational in our experience of creation, our experience of this reality.
I think.
But would you not say, Chip, that thought, that creativity that comes from thought comes from silence? The basis of it is silence. When you're involved in psychological me thinking, you can create, but that's not the same creativity that manifests itself when it comes from silence. And then the thought that appears from that is functional, because that thought is a pointer toward that silent, toward that absolute. That I see that as different.
Yes, I agree, Evelyn, and I think you've said it many times here before, and I think we've talked about it many times. It's the me thought, it's the me idea,
Right,
that basically is activated and then basically becomes so pervasive in the experience of many people.
right,
And where the me thought is absent,
right.
then it's like that book that Buddhist monk wrote, no mind, no problem, basically.
Right,
Or no, he could have said no me, no problem.
right.
Right.
Yeah, so I agree with you totally. Absolutely. It all comes from this. we take on, there's like a little puppet on the table of reality. It's a little puppet. We put our hand into the little puppet and we start interacting with the world. And many people think that they have to interact with the world only while they wear the little puppet of me.
Right.
But you don't. And that's really, I think, one of the things that we're learning about. And I totally agree with what you said, Evelyn.
Yes.
So
I think-
we should maybe use the phrase "me thinking."
Well, you've
Yeah,
used it.
yeah. More
Yeah.
often.
We've used that
Yeah,
because that I think helps
distinguish.
to distinguish that. And it seems to me that true creativity, true art, and it doesn't only have to be music, literature, painting, true art in cooking, in planting, in sewing, true art in the beauty of how someone knows how to speak to another person in a very beautiful way. So true art, I think, comes never from that me thinking, comes from that silence, and then is a direct pointer to the absolute.
Well, on that note,
Yeah, absolutely.
let's leave it there for tonight.
Lovely. Great
Okay.
meeting.
Okay,
Okay,
see you
guys.
guys soon.
Thank you
Okay,
so
Thank you.
much.
nice seeing
Thank
you, Ira and Chip and
Yeah.
everybody.
Nice seeing you
Right.
all as well, guys.
Now-
Thank you very much.
Thank
Now,
You
you.
bet. Thank you.
Let's say that.
Want to say that?
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Oh,